We know Quebec has indeed been issued a threat to leave Canada for what seems to be decades. However, what would Canada's future look like if Quebec indeed performed such an action? Would Canada come out better on the other end? Everything started off on a rough note for the people of Quebec. Back in 1995, they had the chance to leave Canada. However, it was not rendered successful as the vote for the referendum went down by a single %. As we enter the next decade, it does appear like Quebec's sovereignty is on the move once again. Canada would take a hit economically in what many regards as the understatement of the century. Let's get into what this means politically and financially by disentangling this messy premise. Feuds for independence in Quebec have often resulted in protests, riots, and even broken political ties. In 1995, people almost voted Canada out, and it's 2020 now. With the pro-independence party out and the current government labeling Canada as the antagonist, would Canada face another Quebec mess and this time deprive Quebec from their request to go? As I said before, Quebec and its people have financial resources. However, will Quebec join the race to become D1 in sports or stay on the side? In this video, we hope to shed light on Quebec's unknown economic impact. In the end, you will comprehend whether Canada would be better off without Quebec. So, let us dive right in. 1. Quebec. Amid Canada's economics, Quebec enjoys having the second largest economy in Canada, which averages $450 billion out of Canada's GDP. However, analyzed on economic productivity per person basis, Quebec is below average, which does not match the quantity of people living there. Despite this shortfall, the standard of living in Lauren is still high, mainly due to financial aid from the federal government. A large share of federal support comes from the Equalization Payment Gloves program. This was started in 1957 to help poorer provinces pay for basic public services. With Quebec, who has been on the equalization gravy train for almost 68 years to the tune of $490 billion. The Supports Canada Equalization Program ladders for Quebec is about $13 billion every year. Alberta, who is one of the big economic engine of the country, has borne the brunt of this spending by Quebec. The comment economy made the joke. I think we pay in Alberta $7,300 of equalization dollars for every man, woman, and child. If equalization payments were cut off, Quebec would immediately go bankrupt and be forced to cut back on public services like healthcare, medicine, education, and social service programs. This points out the frightening question: would Quebec be able to maintain its current standard of living without Canada? 2. Equalization payments, a lifeline for Quebec? For years, Quebec has been receiving support from the government due to their equalization program that aims to help lower-income regions. Canada set aside funds to help aid and assist provinces with productive but struggling economies. Over a span of 68 years, Quebec has received an astonishing $490 billion in payments, which makes them the single largest recipient in Canada. Said program is mainly funded by other provinces, more specifically Alberta and Ontario. Each and every year, Alberta citizens have pitched in $7,000 per person, a considerable amount heading towards Quebec. Every year, Quebec receives $13 billion from the Canada government, which is being funded by equalization, and a large portion of it goes into their provincial budget. Let's assume Quebec fully cuts ties with Canada. One of the first consequences would be Quebec losing those payments and facing budget cuts. Stopping equalization would severely impact Quebec, as they would lose a reliable source of funding and would cause issues to spending on things like social programs, education, and healthcare. 3. Hydro-Quebec and energy hypocrisy. Quebec's hydroelectric industry plays a crucial role in its economy, generating billions in revenue annually. The province keeps electricity prices artificially low for its residents while exporting power to the United States at premium rates. This pricing strategy benefits Quebec consumers but creates an economic imbalance as taxpayers from other provinces contribute to the equalization payments that help sustain the system. If Quebec were to charge its residents market rates for electricity, its reliance on equalization payments would decrease dramatically by as much as 50%. Quebec continues to receive billions in federal support. At the same time, the province has taken a firm stance against national energy infrastructure projects, blocking initiatives like the Energy East pipeline, which could have benefited the entire country. This contradiction fuels frustration among other provinces that pay into the equalization system. While Quebec claims to prioritize environmental concerns, its actions suggest an unwillingness to make economic adjustments that could reduce its financial dependence on the rest of Canada. This raises the question, should federal support continue enabling Quebec's energy policies, or should reforms be introduced? 4. Quebec's resistance to Canada's economic growth. The Energy East Pipeline, a massive $10 billion project, had the potential to boost Canada's economy, create thousands of jobs, and strengthen the country's energy independence. However, Quebec blocked the project, despite the fact that it benefits from oil revenues generated by other provinces. The cost of bilingualism. Bilingualism was officially established in 1969, largely as a concession to Quebec, aiming to preserve French identity within Canada. However, maintaining this policy comes at a significant cost. Every year, Canada allocates approximately $2.5 billion to bilingual services. Fewer Canadians outside Quebec speak or use French in daily life, raising questions about the long-term sustainability of bilingualism. At the same time, languages like Mandarin, Punjabi, and Arabic are on the rise, reflecting Canada's shifting demographics. 6. Quebec's political dominance in Canada. Since 1969, Quebec has played a dominant role in Canadian politics, producing most of the country's prime ministers. Leaders such as Pierre Trudeau, Brian Mulroney, Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and Justin Trudeau have all hailed from Quebec, shaping national policies in ways that often prioritize the province's interests. At the same time, the Bloc Québécois, a political party that exists solely to advocate for Quebec, continues to hold real power in Ottawa, influencing federal decisions despite having no representation outside the province. Additionally, many federal institutions and government offices are headquartered in Quebec, further strengthening its financial and political influence. Quebec's double standards in language and rights. Quebec's language laws contradict the very bilingualism it expects from the rest of Canada. While Quebec insists on French language rights across the country, it actively restricts English language education within its own borders. Bill 21 bans religious symbols for public workers, disproportionately affecting Sikhs, Muslims, and Christians, raising concerns about discrimination. Conclusion. Would Canada be better off without Quebec? Here's the reality. Quebec is not an oppressed province. It is one of Canada's most privileged. Key takeaways. Quebec receives billions in equalization payments but blocks national projects. It demands bilingualism, yet limits English education in its own province. It dominates Canadian politics, prioritizing its own interests. So, should Canada finally let Quebec go? Or is the real question, should Canada finally say no to Quebec's demands? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.